Hey everybody, I want to do a little demo today of what it takes to make text in the title of a video jiggle artistically and creatively like the 1980s and 90s. So let's take a look at that together. To pull this off, we're going to do a number of things. But first I want to show you, we need video, we need a title design, and we need a way to alter this stuff. So we're going to use a product called Blackmagic Fusion. Fusion is a related product to Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve. They're both phenomenal tools. DaVinci Resolve is a nonlinear video editor, and Fusion is a lot like Adobe's After Effects. It just uses a different kind of workflow. What we want is I want to put over video. I've got this background here. I want to put a video as a background and have text sort of sit over it, and then I want it to jiggle like it's animated handwritten text, which is kind of a heavy effect a lot of times. And so we're going to do that with Fusion. I'm going to go ahead and start up Fusion so you can see how this works. But before I go into Fusion here and really start breaking it all down for us, here's Fusion. I'd like to do a little shout out to a company called Pexels. And Pexels.com has free photos, sometimes of which you need to reference the source of that photo or give attribution, but a lot of times you don't. And then if you go to videos.pexels.com, they've got some stock footage that people are giving away as well. And so feel free to go and contribute to that. That's wonderful, but that's how we're going to use. That's where I got the footage you're going to see today. So this is kind of like a little, city seat stream. Let's imagine this is like the 1980s. There's some pastels here going on, so that works for us. And then we need some hip cop music from the 80s, and to pull that off, I took some of the free open source music available to us from our friends at YouTube that said, if you can hear that, it's basically gonna have like sort of a cop music sound. And so we're gonna play that audio, we're gonna show the video, and then we're going to overlay this jiggly text. And we're going to take two approaches to do it. We're going to build keyframes so that the text can appear and then fade out. But then we're going to programmatically apply a distortion to the text so that it will jiggle. And that'll at a resolution level that will make each of the characters, the words, kind of jiggle around. And so let's go ahead and see how that works. So to start, I need my background. That was a video we just saw, and I'm going to add it to our project here. And the best way to do that is just to drag and drop. So I'm going to drop it right here, and now it's added to our Fusion project. Here's a couple quick notes before you start. Once you have a composition open and you create a new composition, go to File, Preferences, and then File Preferences, that's where you're going to see your frame format tab under your composition, and that's where you can say I want it to be HD, so that's 1080p here, and then I'm gonna have a frame rate of 30 seconds. You can do whatever you want. You can make it 24 frames if you want it to be, filmic, but I'm gonna leave it at 30. So I'm gonna hit save, and I'm out of there. So right now, quickly, I'm just gonna save this whole project as, let's go to my desktop, and I'm just gonna save right to the desktop, and we'll call this 1980s cop show. There we go. So we have our little composition. We've got our background here, which we've dragged in. I'm going to make this expand so we can see what's in it. So the way we do that is right click here in the space, and I'm going to check all these little boxes here so that it expands out and shows us what's in that box. To get this to show up in these are viewers up above. What you do is you click on those little dots. So that sends it to viewer 1. You hit the fit here to set it to size to fit. And then if I click the second dot, that sends it to viewer 2. Again, size to fit is that little button right there. And now we're seeing that video. You can also do it with the keyboard. So if I hit like a 2 right now, it toggles that 2 away. If I hit a 1 on the keyboard right now, it toggles the 1 away. But I'll leave this in the 1, and that's our video. So let's watch it. If I hit space bar, it's going to run this timeline. But before we do that, how long do we want this video to be? This clip is like 14 seconds long. I only want the thing to be about 4 or 5 seconds. So I'm going to, at 30 frames a second, if we do about 120 seconds, we get about 4 seconds of video. And now if I hit spacebar, we're seeing our video scroll around up here. Okay, not bad. And then the green down below means it's kind of caching the effects or whatever else is going on up top. I'm going to hit spacebar to stop it. That's like hitting the play and the stop here. If I hit this little proxy button, you'll notice that this turns red, and this means it can really write this stuff to disk for you. If I hit play, it's just going to try to cache everything so that it uses proxy files, and that just makes things flow a little more smoothly in those little up there previews. So I'm going to pause that. I'm going to leave proxy on as we go. So now we need some text, right? But before we need text, we need some music. We need that music again. So how do we do that? Down here we have the audio on enabled, and if I click it, this will now have it muted. But if you right click it, you notice you get options. So I'm going to hit choose, and what this does is this just lets you hear the music that is on. You know, it'll just sync it up with the timeline that's here. So I just added a little wave file that is our music. I'm going to go ahead and save my work so far. There we go. And then let's go back to the start of the timeline and hit play again. Okay, there we go. So it's working. We got our little audio. Let's add some text. So now to add text, what we do is we want to select this, and then I'm going to hit shift space for a little search box. If I start writing the word text, TEX, you'll notice that it has a bunch of TEX values in here. I can arrow up and down this list. I'm going to go to text plus. If I were to hit enter, it would add it and connect it to the background. There's a faster way though for text. So I'm going to hit cancel here. That's how you get to most of your tools. With this selected, there is a text tool right here. This is just like shortcuts to commonly used tools. So I'm just going to hit text plus, and now it connects those two things together. So I'm going to slide this over, and this thing merges it together. If I send this merge over to window 2, now again, we're seeing where this text is going to appear on top of this whole movie here. And so if I click the text, there's our text where it's going to appear. I'm going to type in here, and engine post production. Like that, I'm going to capitalize P because that's what I do. And with that selected, you see it looks like that, but that's not how we had described that it should look, right? We want it to be more like handwritten and left justified. So what I do is I can pick my font again. There's my little scripty font. Better. Let's justify it to the left. So I go to the layout. I can go down to alignment and go left. Better. And then I can drag this to the left. I want to line it up with this pole. If I grab in the middle there or that, I can drag it anywhere I want. It's unconstrained. Whoop. I don't like to do it that way. I want to just move it exactly in the center over to the left. So I'm going to grab this arrow, which constrains it to horizontal, and just push it over here so it lines up with the pole. I like that. That works, but it's too small. So I'm going to go back to text, and this is like the font size. So I'm going to crank up that font size. Yeah, I like that. It's too boring though, and I'm losing stuff. So I need an outline. The way to do that is that's under shading for text. So I'm doing all this with the text node selected. I'm going to go to shading. There's a white solid fill right now. We're seeing that. If I disconnect that, disable that, it disappears because it makes the fill go away, but the text is still there if I re-enable it. So that's fine. So the second box says red outline. Now I want it to be a black outline. It just reminds me what the property is. I'm going to hit enable, and then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to pick black. So I can either drag down to black or just select black over here. I'm going to hit OK. Yep, we got our outline, but it's too thin, so I'm going to make it thicker. I like that. It's an okay start. Maybe a little smidge thicker. Yep, that works for me. You know what I really need? I feel it needs a drop shadow. So again, we're going to go back to our little tool selection thing. So with this selected, I'm going to hit shift space, and now I'm going to just write shadow and see what options we get. Here we go. There's a shader, there's shadow. I want shadow, so I arrow down, select that, hit enter. And now we've added a shadow. With this selected though, I can go up here and I can grab this tool and start to move that shadow around. Look at that. I want to bring it up just a smidge. And then to the right a smidge. There we go. And now we have some text. So we're getting closer. This kind of looks like what I wanted. I'm going to go and hit save, file save, and I'm going to play this again. Yeah. Looks like our little 80s show. Okay, I'm going to stop. What I really want to do is I want it to fade in, right? So there's a couple ways to do this, but you do it with the text level. So there's two elements on the screen related to the text. There's actually three, right? There's the fill, there's the outline, and then there's the shadow. But here's the trick. The shadow is dependent on the text because it follows the text in that node order. And so if both the fill and the outline disappear, the shadow's got nothing to cast shade, and so it disappears as well. So if I take the text and I go to the 30th frame, there's a couple ways to do that. I can scrub around here, or I can type in what frame I want to jump to by typing it in here. But what I'm going to do is, or here at the end, I'm going to just go to frame 30, and then from there I'm going to first enable keyframe animation, and then I'm going to start animating. So 30 is where I would want opacity to come to a full 1, meaning fully visible, as opposed to 0.0, which is fully invisible. So with text selected, with my white solid fill selected, I'm going to take this little gray box next to opacity and double click it. That turns it green. That means it's enabled for keyframing. Now I can right click here and say set key. I'm going to do the same thing with the black outline. I'm going to double click it. That enables it for keyframing. Now I'm going to set that key. So to make it disappear, right now all we've done is tell it stay enabled because there's nothing else going on. And there's a little line there that reminds us there's a keyframe. I want to go to the 29th frame. So I'm going to type in 29. And on that 29th frame, I'm going to set a new keyframe and make both of those properties an opacity of 0.0. So to do that, I go to one property, black outline. It's blue right now, not green. That means this is already being keyframed. I can add a keyframe right here. I'm going to drag this to 0. Now, did that keyframe it? Yes, it did. Look at that. It auto keyframed it right there. That outline has disappeared. And now if I scrub forward, it appears at the right time. So if I go back to 29 again, and I go to the white solid fill, and I change it to 0, watch it go from blue to green. There you go. And now that fill is gone entirely with the outline and the shadow because there's nothing to cast shade, right? So that means all the way to the start and up till frame 30, and then it suddenly appears. So let's take a look how that looks. Let me just save everything really quickly. Save. And let's go to the start and hit play again. And it appears just as it would in normal film from the 1980s. That's the way we want it. So now we need it to fade out at the end. So let's jump up to frame 90. Just type it in. And this is where I want to remind this. Now, before I was just setting a keyframe by right-clicking at 30, set it to say now it's visible. Changing it made it invisible. So there's a couple of ways I can do this. I can either kind of scrub down and scrub back up again, and that turns it green, meaning I just set a keyframe. Same with this. I'll scrub it down and up again. That set a keyframe. Now I want to jump to like frame 100. See how I put a line there? And now I want to scrub those both back down again. I'm still always on the text here. Down and down. And it set keyframes for both of those. Look at that. So now it fades. If you're watching right here, it fades that text out. So let's save that. Control S. I'm going to jump to the start, hit the space bar. And now it appears and then fades out. If I didn't like that and I wanted it to fade faster, there's another trick I can do, and that is I can jump here to frame 100, and I can get rid of what we have here by right-clicking and say Remove Key. I'll do it for both of these properties, and let's jump forward now. Notice that that green is gone, so I could go to 105 or 110, let's say, and let's have it fade out here instead. And that'll just be a longer fade. Let's save that, jump back to the start, and watch it again. And we get a more gradual fade out. So we have just about everything. What we need to do now is we need to make the thing animate with the jiggliness, right? That was the original goal. So I'm going to jump forward here into about frame 30 so I can see stuff. And there's a way to do that. And it's super easy and kind of clever and way easier than trying to keyframe animation a bunch of wiggliness, right? So with my work saved, and with shadow selected, so I click away and just select shadow, I'm going to go searching for displacement. So shift space opens this little search box. I'm going to type in displace. There it is. So we're not displacing in X, Y, Z 3 dimensions. We're just displacing X and Y. So that's, standard displace. I'm going to hit enter. Now that adds it after the shadow and the text. Why do we want to put it here instead of up here? Because we really we want the shadow to follow the text, and we want all of that to be displaced. In reality, the shadow will follow the displacement as well, but we'll tie these two together first and then displace it all. That works. So you would imagine what if I hit play now and I displace it, and instead it does absolutely nothing because we haven't told it how to displace it yet. We just have some interesting properties for displacing off to the right here. Again, these nodes unlock properties of things, right? They attach properties, unlock properties. And so over here, refraction strength, light power, light angle spread. What is this? This is really stuff that you would use to kind of make a displacement look like there was a refracting edge. So if it were cloth and you were displacing virtual cloth or something like that, it might look like it caught a little light of the sun. But we're not really doing that. We don't really want to displace cloth. We want a 2D thing to just jiggle, right? So we don't care about that. That's like 3-dimensional lighting, and that's like water being displaced or something like that. So instead we just want to jiggle it. So how do we jiggle it? How do we tell displace jiggle like some special way? The way we do it is with noise. So I'm going to click off of here. I'm going to hit shift space and type noise, and there it is, fast noise. So I'm going to select fast noise. Notice that it's not attached to anything. And what I'm going to send fast noise over here to 1 by clicking that first little dot. Could have hit 1 on the keyboard as well, like we said. And it looks like clouds. It looks like the Photoshop render clouds. In fact, if I scale it up, it really looks like Photoshop render clouds, right? And if I crank up the contrast and the brightness, man, that's starting to look like Photoshop's cloud render, right? And then the more detail I give it, the more great. Oh, now we're rendering clouds like it's nobody's business. So what happens if I hit play on that? Nothing at all, because down here, this is where you can set the seethe amount and seethe rate. So seethe amount is how much it's going to change within those clouds, let's call them. And the seethe rate is how often. So if I change the seethe amount to, let's say, 5 and the seethe rate to 5, let's go back to like 3 here. Let's see what that looks like. So if I click out here, oh, it's going nuts. If I go way down, let's go down like 1 and a seethe rate of 3. That'll probably be still pretty nuts. Let's take it all the way back down to like really a low rate. But a little above that. There we go. Now it looks like water that's moving around or something. So how do we connect that to displace? And that's where this gets really fun. If we right click and drag from the output, that's the little red dot here, down to displace and drop it, we have the option to use that fast noise as a mask or as a foreground. We set it to the foreground, and notice what it does to the text. So now if I play it, this is going to animate in a wacky way over here, and this is going to animate as if it's sort of sitting on top of this, where the dark areas are lower and the light areas are higher. And doesn't that kind of look like water? Looks like it's floating in water. Well, that's kind of the effect we want, but not really, right? So we need to fiddle with some properties here. So what I tend to do is I imagine, well, detail's nice, but we need a lower contrast reality going on, because we want subtle changes. We don't want big changes. If we make it a little brighter, a little more contrast, and that'll make it pop a little more. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, those letters are jiggling nicely, but they're really uniform horizontally, aren't they? So let's change the angle. Now watch, if I change the angle, this is going to rotate. And that'll just offset how much and how it seethes. So that's okay. But you know what we need? We need a much higher seethe rate. So that's okay. Let's change the amount. Let's bring that way down to a negative number. Now we're getting that wiggly text look. We want it to be a low amount like this, so I'm going to scale it down so it keeps it just real subtle, because it's bigger areas that are changing. But now I want to bring that right up quite a bit. And that should really jiggle those letters. So we're getting really close. So I'm going to go a little bit higher. And now we got nice jiggly letters. Just like the 1980s. All over again. Okay, so now let's imagine we've done our job. We really want to save this and do something with it. Send it over to another project or something like that. I'm going to save my work, but there's something we need to do. We need the merge. That's everything is, this merge is pointing over here. We want that to save out. So what we do is we need a saver. So with that selected, I'm going to do Shift Space, SAV, and there's our saver. So we immediately have that. I can just hit Enter on the keyboard. I don't need to care about this because I'm going to deal with that in a second. And now we have our saver. Our saver has its own properties. It's set to target files. Image files are the best way to output a rendered animation, especially if it's complicated. Why? Because if it fails and the whole Fusion crashes, it'll still have rendered, let's say, 3/4 of your project into individual files, and you can pick up where it left off when you start the app again and re-render. If you do that with a movie file and it crashes 3/4 of the way through, you lose it all. But this isn't a very big project, so I'm just going to say QuickTime. And in this case, for the QuickTime file, if I go to the format, you'll notice it's H.264. With different platforms, you have different options. Like, for example, on a Mac, you're going to see, ProRes. But H.264 is fine for our little demo here. I'm going to go back to the file, and I'm going to say where to save this thing. So I'm going to go out here, and I'm just going to go right to the desktop with it. I've got a couple examples I already did once. I'm going to change this to EP Production 3. And if I hit save and if I hit render, it's going to render this thing. But you know what's not going to be there? The music. The music right now won't want to render with it. And that's because really, when you're doing stuff like this, you may want to add the music later. This just helps me get kind of an atmosphere going, for example. But if I did literally want to add the audio, then up here with the saver selected, I can go to the audio setting and I can pick that same sound file again. So if I go back to my documents where I've hidden it away and pick music, I have that. And you can offset the audio. So I could start, if it's a 14-second audio clip or a 3-minute audio song, I could start, 5 minutes in, depending on how long it is. But I'm just going to leave it as it is right now, and we're good to go here. So if I hit render, and again, over here, I could say, I could batch render a whole bunch of different things, or I could say, do a quarter size so I can just preview it, or render it and send it to somebody to preview. Instead, I'm just going to hit start render. And as it goes here, you'll notice that it's showing us how it's going to output up here. And it's demoing that right here in the save. And it would be putting it into files, but we told it to send it to QuickTime. There it is, render complete. And then let's see how it looks. I think this is my file. If I load it. Pretty awesome. I'm excited about that. And that's the tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section. Feel free to subscribe as well if you're interested, or if you want to go ahead and do your own samples and link back to it in the comments. That's cool. I'd love to see the other clever stuff you come up with. But I hope you found this helpful. Thanks a lot and have a good one.